The title of this video, The Treaty Was Signed, but one human refused to obey. In the aftermath of a devastating interstellar war, humanity signs a peace treaty with the alien Concordium to ensure its survival. But one man, Captain Darius Thorn, refuses to accept what he sees as surrender disguised as diplomacy. Declared a traitor, he disappears into the shadows, building a resistance to fight back against growing alien control and manipulation. As the Concordium tightens its grip, Darius sparks a movement that reignites Earth's defiance. Through sabotage, sacrifice, and legend, he becomes a symbol of humanity's unwillingness to kneel. The treaty was signed, but one human refused to obey, and the galaxy would never forget. The stars above Earth no longer shimmered with wonder. They blinked like bruises in the sky, reminders of what humanity had survived and lost. In orbit, the remnants of shattered satellites and warships floated silently, spinning like forgotten prayers. Peace had been declared, but the cost echoed across every scarred continent. The Treaty of 9 Suns was signed in the presence of 100 species, and Earth, fractured and humbled, had been brought into a galaxy that once feared it. Within the massive chamber of the galactic Concordium, ringed by cold metal spires and a dome of living crystal, the last signature pressed against glowing parchment sealed humanity's fate. President Leona Vance, expression worn beyond her years, stood upright but hollow-eyed, her hand trembling slightly as she stepped back from the floating holopad. Around her, the gathered alien dignitaries murmured in satisfaction. Scaled beings of the Serikai, the chitin-armored Veshel, and the translucent elders of the Ilari, among many others. Their war was over. Earth, the unruly child of the stars, had finally submitted. And yet, in the far corner of the gallery, one man stood with arms crossed, unmoved. Captain Darius Thorn didn't flinch when the final seal glow blew. He didn't applaud. He didn't breathe. He had fought on Mars, bled on Europa, and buried friends in the shattered cities of Earth. The war hadn't made him bitter. It had refined him into something sharp and dangerous. Peace, as offered now, was a chain forged in honeyed words and veiled threats. He could feel it tightening. He turned away before the ceremony concluded, his boots silent on the polished floor as he exited the chamber. Behind him, lights flashed and leaders smiled for history. But Darius walked into the shadow of a future he didn't believe in. On the streets of New Avalon, once London's sister city, now Earth's new capital, massive holoscreens played the treaty ceremony on a loop. Civilians gathered in scattered clusters, some weeping with relief, others watching with silent skepticism. Alien peacekeepers patrolled in formation, their non-lethal weapons sheathed but visible, their movements too precise, too practiced. Darius watched them from a rooftop 2 blocks away. He had once held command over 3,000 soldiers. Now he felt like a ghost, out of place in this rebuilt world. Captain Thorn, a voice came through his earpiece, dry and clipped. It was Commander Ryle, his former second-in-command, now liaison to the Concordium. You didn't attend the reception. I've had my fill of drinks with politicians, Darius replied, eyes scanning the peacekeeper patrol below. The war's over. Time to lay down the rifle. Darius said nothing. A flock of artificial drones swept across the skyline, releasing banners that shimmer with the phrase unity through peace in a dozen languages. The enemy didn't surrender, he finally said. They made us sign away our fire. They offered survival. No, they offered a leash. And we took it with a smile. There was a pause. Then Ryle said quieter, "You're not the only one struggling with it." Darius ended the call. By nightfall, the celebrations thinned. Fireworks soared into the atmosphere and burst just below the mesosphere. Children pointed skyward. Mothers wept in relief. And somewhere beneath it all, Darius wandered the ruins of old Manhattan, now part of an off-limit zone under alien reconstruction efforts. The bones of skyscrapers loomed like broken teeth. He stopped before a blackened wall still marked with the sigil of his former battalion, a sword through a flame. Dust drifted over his boots like ash. He crouched and ran a gloved hand across the cracked concrete. "You told us to hold the line," he whispered to the wall, to the memory of those buried below. "So we held it. Now they call us dangerous." A subtle whirring noise snapped him from his reverie. A drone, Concordium made, hovered behind him, its eye blinking red. "Citizen, this area is restricted." Darius rose slowly, arms out, name and authorization code. He turned, slow, measured. "Captain Darius Thorn. Authorization expired." The drone hesitated. "Scanning. Return to civilian zones, or you will be detained." He nodded once, and then hurled a shard of rubble directly at the drone sensor. It sparked and spiraled down, crashing into the debris. Darius didn't run. He waited, listening. No response came. They didn't care enough to investigate. Not yet. Later, in the underground of the city, far beneath the surveillance reach of the Concordium, he met with two former soldiers in a tunnel lit by cracked bulbs and old generator hum. Their uniforms were patched, their faces hollowed. They looked at him like a relic. "You really back, sir?" one asked. Darius nodded. "They signed away our dignity. I'm here to take it back." The other man exhaled, rubbing his jaw. "You know what this means?" "I do." "They'll call it treason." "Then let them." They exchanged glances. Then one offered a small, rusted badge, the same sword through flame. "Then we start small. Sabotage. Message control. Find the ones who still remember." Darius clenched the badge in his palm. The treaty had been signed, but he had not. Ask ChatGPT. The wind howled to the skeletal ruins of what had once been Chicago's northern district, a low, mournful sound that carried dust, ash, and memories. Beneath collapsed concrete, beneath layers of forgotten war, men and women moved like whispers, ghosts without graves. Here, Darius Thorn no longer wore rank or insignia. He was no longer captain, nor soldier. He was something else entirely, an ember refusing to die, since his disappearance from a public eye. The Concordium labeled him a deserter. Earth's provisional government, too frightened to speak his name aloud, issued silent warrants. But in the broken cities and border zones, the people knew better. Stories of his sabotage at the alloy processing plant in Kiev spread like wildfire. Supply convoys rerouted. Peacekeeper patrols doubled. Still, the man known as Darius moved through the dark, unshackled and unrepentant. Tonight, he met with a group of six inside an abandoned metro tunnel lit by jury-rigged lamps. They sat on crates, a makeshift circle of rust and resolve. Not one of them wore a uniform, yet the air buzzed with discipline. They were ex-soldiers, engineers, medics, forgotten people. "Name the cell," said Alina Maras, her voice gravel over silk. She was the eldest among them, once a field surgeon on Europa. Her left hand trembled from nerve damage, but her eyes burned sharp. Darius didn't hesitate. Iron Flame. No one argued. The name felt right. Something forged, something meant to burn. He laid out maps stolen from alien databases, marked outposts, fuel caches, relay hubs. "We don't take them head on." "Not yet. We cut the legs out from under them. Hit, vanish, leave the people wondering who we are. And when they find us," asked the thin man with a prosthetic jaw. "They won't," Darius replied, "because we're everywhere." That night, their first target was a communications drone node just outside New Kyoto, a passive surveillance hub used by the Ilari to monitor human frequencies. It wasn't guarded heavily, the Concordium never believing humans would resist so soon. The assault was silent. Clean. They disabled the core and wiped 2 months of surveillance records. No casualties, just a ripple in the system. And then they left behind a mark. A spray-painted symbol, the sword through flame. By dawn, the image had been replicated across 3 cities. On government buildings, transit tunnels, even the outer hull of a Concordium cargo ship. The message was clear. Darius watched the reaction from a hidden monitor room deep beneath an abandoned spaceport. Concordium News labeled it terrorism, a threat to peace. But in the faces of ordinary people, those lining up for ration stamps and walking under the shadows of alien drones, something shifted. Not hope, not yet, but awareness, awakening. He spoke to them next through a hijacked broadcast channel. The video lasted less than 90 seconds. No music, no flag, just his face, weathered, half-lit, eyes sharp as glass. We didn't bleed for signatures. We bled for sovereignty, for the right to decide who we are. The treaty silenced our cannons, but it didn't silence our will. This isn't defiance. This is memory. And I remember everything they took. Then the screen cut to black, and across thousands of streets, people stood a little straighter. The Concordium retaliated quickly. Peacekeeper squads raided 10 suspected resistance zones, arresting dozens. Curfews tightened. Checkpoints doubled. The Earth Assembly convened an emergency session, demanding cooperation and calm. But they didn't understand the fire they'd tried to smother. In the heart of Sector 7, a slum rebuilt atop the bones of an old aerospace complex. Darius in his cell found a hidden weapons cache left from the final days of the war. Inside were depleted rail rifles, encrypted communicators, and a partially functional mech suit, scarred but reparable. It was a relic of his past, one of the last things Earth had designed before surrender. As he ran his hands across the suit's fractured armor, Alina spoke from behind him. "You're making a legend of yourself, Thorn." "I'm just a man," he replied. "No," she said. "That's the problem. They made you a myth, and myths don't stay small." That night, Darius sat alone at the edge of a broken overpass, watching the stars. He thought of the men who died under his command, of the alien diplomat who shook hands while ordering orbital strikes, and of President Vance, who, in trying to save humanity, had bounded in silence. He didn't hate her. He pitied her, because while she hoped for peace, he saw the truth written in every concession, every cloaked drone, every denied question. The treaty wasn't the end. It was the opening move. And the real war, his war, had just begun. The conference chamber aboard the Concordium vessel Vigilance pulsed with cold, artificial light. Walls of gleaming obsidian refracted the shifting colors of alien skin and ceremonial robes. Commander Vecron of the Serikai stood at the center, towering over the seated diplomats like a blade among feathers. His carapace armor shimmered faintly, the ridges along his shoulders flexing as he spoke. Human resistance is no longer a flicker. It is a flame. This Darius Thorn has struck 14 facilities in 6 cities. Supply chains are collapsing. Our peacekeeping forces are being bled dry. The Ilari delegate blinked her translucent eyelids slowly, her voice calm and laced with biosonic harmonics. The treaty was signed. Earth agreed to disarm, to integrate. They agreed under duress. Vecron snapped. And now they remember that. A low murmur of discontent rippled through the chamber. The Veshel ambassador, his mandibles twitching, offered a more pragmatic solution. Remove the head. The resistance will decay. Send in assassins. But the Concordium, despite its might, feared symbols more than swords. Darius was no longer just a soldier. He had become a narrative, and narratives had a way of multiplying. Far below, in a flooded sector of New Bogota, Darius watched the smuggled feed of the meeting. The alien diplomats were careful with words, but their tension betrayed them. They were afraid, and not just of him, of what he represented. He closed the feed and turned to face his growing cell. The underground had spread. Former engineers now rigged old satellites for secure transmissions. Artists recreated his words into posters plastered across metro lines. Retired soldiers drilled teenagers in abandoned parks. Iron Flame wasn't an army. It was an idea, and Darius had no illusions about that. Ideas were fragile. So he moved carefully, striking targets that bled the Concordium without pushing civilians into fire. But it was only a matter of time before someone broke. Trust had always been a scarce currency in war, and now it was bankrupt. One of the smaller cells based in Lagos had gone silent. When Iron Flame scouts finally breached the safe house, they found no bodies, only ashes and an alien tracking device fused into the wall. Darius studied the footage, jaw clenched. Whoever betrayed them hadn't left fingerprints, but the message was clear. They were being watched from within. Alina confronted him as the team reassembled in a secure underground tram station, now repurposed into a command hub. "You need to stop speaking as if we're invisible," she said, arms folded, voice edged with urgency. "They're not underestimating us anymore." "We can't afford silence," Darius replied. "Not now. People need to know this isn't suicide, that someone's still fighting for their voice." Her expression hardened. Someone already sold us out. Darius nodded. I know, and that's why we adapt. He shifted their strategy overnight. Smaller cells. No centralized caches. No shared names. Every message now cycled through 3 dead drops. The iron flame burned lower, but hotter, more focused, more dangerous. Meanwhile, within the Earth Assembly, President Leona Vance stood beneath a cracked stained glass dome, the alien security presence around her more obvious than ever. She watched a broadcast replay of Darius's latest strike. The disabling of a floating surveillance tower above Neo-Tokyo, done without civilian casualties. She hated herself for what she felt. Pride. He was my best, she murmured. Now he's your biggest threat, said her aide, the Concordium appointed liaison. His voice held no warmth. Vance didn't reply. She couldn't, not when her own voice echoed less and less within the chambers of power. She had thought compromise would preserve Earth's future, but each day brought more restrictions, more disappearances, more demands. The Concordium didn't want partners. It wanted subordinates. And yet if she moved against them, Earth would burn again. That night, Darius's network intercepted a fragment of alien code running through a low-priority energy conduit. It wasn't encrypted well, almost intentionally sloppy. The data showed a shipment manifest of experimental neural regulators, devices known to be prototypes for behavioral suppression tech. The Concordium planned to install them across human educational centers for long-term behavioral stability. He stared at the data for a long time. They mean to rewrite our children, Alina said beside him. Not control them, overwrite them. Darius stood. Then we hit the transport before it arrives. But we don't have... Doesn't matter. The plan was reckless. Even he knew that. But letting that shipment arrive meant surrendering the next generation before they could even speak for themselves. His team intercepted the convoy near a supply depot in Arctic Zone 12. The attack was swift, brutal, and cost him dearly. 3 of his best fighters fell in the snow, staining the ice red. But they secured the shipment and destroyed the tech in a controlled blast. The footage spread faster than he expected. A burning Concordium crawler. Snow drifting over it, the iron flame sigil scorched into its side. In the background, Darius's voice. You do not own our minds. You do not raise our children. You do not define us. In a chamber high above Earth, Vecron watched the video with narrowed eyes. This wasn't rebellion. It was war. And war, he understood intimately. Activate Project Hollow Vow, he commanded. When his aides hesitated, he growled low, This human has forgotten his place. Let us remind him. Far below, Darius stood atop a rusted tower, eyes fixed on the horizon. He felt it in his bones. A shift. The Concordium would no longer play by rules or treaties. Whatever came next would be blood for blood. He didn't smile, but for the first time in weeks, he felt certainty. They were coming, and he would be ready. Ask ChatGPT. ChatGPT said. The rain came in waves, a relentless percussion against the hull of the decommissioned carrier that now served as Iron Flame's final command post. Darius Thorn stood near the forward viewport, the glass scarred by past impacts and pressure stress. Below, the Earth glittered with artificial constellations, Concordium outposts, drone swarms, enforcement towers. The skies had once belonged to humanity. Now they crawled with foreign lights, and time was running out. They had tracked Project Hollow Vow to the orbital spire called Meridian's Edge, a towering station that tethered low Earth orbit with a descending skyhook. The intelligence was precise. Vecron himself had moved there, along with a prototype device capable of inducing mass neural suppression. No more uprisings. No more resistance. Just docile, obedient minds. Darius turned to his assembled team. Most bore injuries now. Burned arms, surgical scars, prosthetics grown from battlefield necessity. Alina leaned on a cane, her gait uneven, but her presence steady. She looked older than she had weeks ago. But so did he. War did that. Especially the kind fought in shadows. This is our last strike, Darius said, voice low but carrying. We don't come back from this. No one flinched. They call us relics. Radicals. Liars. But we know the truth. If we do nothing, they erase us not with weapons, but with forgetting. We're the last page in a story they want to rewrite. Alina nodded once. Then let's make sure it's written in fire. They launched at dawn. The orbital skiff, cloaked and barely holding pressure, latched onto the outer scaffold of Meridian's edge just as its shielding cycled down for maintenance. Inside, automated defense systems scanned with the efficiency of machines trained to expect other machines. Darius moved through the corridors with ghost-like precision, the squad breaking into teams of 2. Alina and her tech operative disabled the comm grid, while Darius led the breach toward the command sphere. He knew Vecron would be there. He needed him to be, not out of vengeance, but because myths had to fall publicly if they were to truly die. The chamber doors opened with a hydraulic hiss, and there stood the Serikai commander, tall and glistening in his ritual armor, surrounded by 2 honor guards. He turned slowly, as though expecting this exact confrontation. Captain Thorn, Vecron rasped, mandibles flexing. A creature of habit, still obsessed with sacrifice. Better than submission, Darius replied, leveling his rifle. You believe you've sparked a revolution, but you are alone. Your species tires of resistance. Soon they will thank us. Darius didn't answer. He moved. The firefight that followed was brutal and intimate. The honor guards moved like living metal, fast and precise. One caught Alina's shoulder with a plasma arc as she entered behind Darius, but she gritted her teeth and returned fire. Sparks screamed off the walls. One guard fell, then the other. Only Vecron remained, bleeding from one leg, but grinning through broken mandibles. I studied you, he hissed. Your patterns, your failures. You're not a soldier. You're a symptom. Darius didn't argue. He pressed forward, grappling the alien to the ground, driving a carbon blade into the joint beneath its chest plate. Vecron convulsed, hissed, then went still. The silence afterward was absolute. They planted the charges without a word. There was no need to control the station, no time to broadcast more speeches. The data cores had been purged, the neurosuppressor wrecked beyond repair. What mattered now was the destruction itself. Something undeniable, something visible to every city below. The countdown began. Alina slumped beside the escape pod, blood leaking from her arm. We go together, she said. Darius shook his head. If they capture me, they turn me into a weapon against everything we built. You think your death saves us? I think it reminds them that some voices don't die quietly. She didn't argue. He helped her into the pod, locked the seal, and stepped back as it launched, one small light vanishing into the void. When the explosion came, Meridian's edge bloomed like a second dawn in orbit. The shock wave rolled across Earth's upper atmosphere, visible to millions. The symbol of Concordium power had become debris, scattering like ash over every continent. In the weeks that followed, the narrative fractured. The Concordium tried to spin it as a terrorist act, but too many people had seen too much. Footage of the resistance leaked. Evidence of mind control tech surfaced. Protests became movement. Cities declared neutrality. Some even expelled alien peacekeepers outright. And the symbol, the sword through flame, appeared again. On buildings, on clothes, on skin. Darius Thorn became more than a man. Not just a myth, but a warning, a testament that submission, no matter how polished, could always be broken by those willing to stand. Far from Earth, beyond the glow of its ruined skies, a child asked her mother, "Is he really gone?" And the mother, holding a badge too old to shine, whispered, "No, not gone, just waiting to be remembered."